sitting here feeling my pressure by myself in my kitchen. So I'm gonna at 4:38. I'm gonna call the meeting to order. I'm not aware of any agenda changes. Did anybody need us to change the order of anything?
No.
Okay. Chair's report. I do have a chair's report that I would like to read. Stay with me because I am going to read it. More than once this week, I woke to news that brought me to tears. As I struggled to process what was happening in our nation, I worried about being a bystander. It is for this reason I choose to speak today. In my position as a math coach, I speak to colleagues about the importance of knowledge building for all, and I challenge them to dig into the study of culturally responsive teaching. Alas, that is not my role here today. As school committee chair, I want to illuminate the larger role we hold as leaders in policy development and equitable practice. I was drawn to Mask's statement providing a vision for school committees across Massachusetts. I quote, "As school leaders, we must look to those policies, practices, and procedures that often unintentionally produce inequitable outcomes for children at risk and adopt strong anti-racism policy statements locally to show our commitment to identify, challenge, and change values, structures, and behaviors that can create systemic racism." So how do we learn and change a system we ourselves are immersed in? I believe we do this by continuing to be a model for lifelong learning. This EduSpeak phrase, often espoused in public forums, can lead us to pursue the ability to distinguish among three vital educational topics: multicultural education, social justice education, and culturally responsive teaching. With this knowledge, we will be better prepared to discourse policies and make decisions that may enable Mask's vision to become a reality. In this vein, I encourage us to become more aware and question not only those around us, but ourselves as we learn and lead together. WES is a small yet powerful community. It is my honor to chair this group of educationally minded citizens as we strive to make tremendous impact in the pursuit of equity for all.
Well done.
Well done.
Bravo.
Okay. Yep.
Thank you. Betsy.
You're welcome. Any members speak?
Well, along with that, I did go to the protest march in Wellfleet last Sunday, a little over a week ago, and was incredibly moved by the care and consideration and love that spread through the town. There were about 150 people there, of all ages. Many of our kids were there with their families, and the police department just warmed my heart. Mike Hurley, the chief, wrote a letter and posted it the night before, talking about how they, as a police department, support the people in this march. They support every march anyway, but they really are happy to be part of this, that he had dialogued with one of the leaders of the march. And not only were there plenty of police officers around to help us and to keep us safe, a couple who were not on duty marched with us, took a knee with us when we got to the police station, and the whole spirit of the thing was just so Wellfleet, warm and cuddly, if such a thing can be. I was really proud of our community, and I was proud of the families I saw there, and I love the fact that young people are taking a stand right now. And what a couple of weeks this has been. It's been absolutely breathtakingly sad. It was one little bright spot.
Thank you, Martha. Are there any other members who wish to speak?
Yes.
Jill?
if I'm not mistaken, this is Mort's last school committee, right? Hello?
So
Can
as,
you hear me?
I guess.
so as a board member, it would be his last, but he's staying on with the negotiation team until we get that
All
finished.
right, but this is his last Wellfleet
Yes.
one, right? So I want to thank Mort for all his years of service and dedication and everything that Mort has contributed to serving on the school committee. So thank you, Mort.
Thank you, Mort.
Thank you, Mort. We're gonna miss you.
Mhm.
I'm
Best
around.
mentor ever.
All right, I'm gonna move us to priority business and we'll start with Mary Beth.
Sure. So I have been keeping you in the loop via the communication that goes out via Parent Square. Since you're not in Parent Square, I send it to you as an email. And I just wanted to add a couple of other things. And the first being that we do have a student for school choice in kindergarten. So one of those 2 seats is now filled. And the student is from Eastham. The student has attended the Wellfleet Montessori preschool in the building, and the parent wanted the child to move with his peers from preschool who would be at West. Another thing to report is Spring Beckhorn. She's the school program coordinator at Audubon and Wellfleet, and she has provided classroom teachers video lessons, a nature journaling template, and remote learning resources. And she has put this remote learning resource package together with her colleagues from Acadia, Tidmarch, and Oak Knoll. And lessons include bird nests for K and 1, avian adaptations for grades 2 and 3, and wildlife adaptations for grades 4 and 5. Mr. Gali is seeking an elementary and secondary education emergency relief fund, ESSER, as it's referred to support students and address schools' COVID-19 impact. So for Wellfleet, we will be awarded funds and they will be allocated to summer learning opportunities and remote technology needs. That could be new devices if we need them, assistive technology, or adaptive equipment for our special ed population who could use potentially additional supports in the home if we go to remote learning. And I created, with the help of Mr. Gali, a remote learning parent survey that was sent out yesterday afternoon via Parent Square. And there are 4 inquiries regarding students and parents' experiences with emergency remote learning, as well as an opportunity to provide narrative feedback, either to a teacher or to me on behalf of the school, to help us reflect and improve remote learning experiences. And I ask that responses are back by June 19th. I checked today. All of the responses will come directly to me, and they are anonymous. And we had 20 responses so far. So I was encouraged by that.
Good.
Any questions?
Martha?
Yes, I do have a question, Mary Beth. That's
Sure.
information that the strategic planning committee will be very interested in looking at. So if at some point you could share the questions themselves, you don't have to share the responses until at this point, or maybe never. But it would be a really good way for us to begin to think about how we're going to gather that kind of information.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for doing that.
It was with Keith's help.
Great. Anyone else for comments or questions for Mary Beth?
I have just joined in. I had tried on my phone, the cell phone, and that told me I didn't have the right number. So
Hold on one second. I have to go look at my door.
I am in total frustration, but at least I've gotten this far. And Let's see.
Well, we can hear you. We can hear
Good.
you.
At least there's that, right?
Yep.
I'm sorry to mess up, come in the middle and all that, but I certainly wanted to say something about Mort and the privilege of having served with him for so many, 20 years. And it's just been such an honor, and he's enhanced and loved our school in every way possible. And I just wanted to say thank you, Mort. So
you.
I know I missed the right time for that, but there we
There
go.
That's
was no
okay,
right
Jan.
time.
I
There
really,
is no right time. Any time's okay to say that.
okay, that's good.
We're glad you made it.
Yeah, me too. I'm not sure what the mess
You're
up.
on
Oh.
now. Oh,
There
we
you
see,
are.
we can see you.
Whew, there we go. Oh, what a struggle.
so is this through the computer or the cell phone now?
This is the computer.
Hey, hey.
I don't know what happened. All of a sudden it worked. And I tried it and tried it and tried it. So anyway, thank you. Sorry.
No problem at all. We had just finished hearing about Mary Beth's principal report. Did you want us to
No. that's
summarize?
okay.
Or you okay? Okay.
I was actually listening on the telephone.
Okay.
My regular phone.
Okay. Multitasking. All right, we're going to move on to Tom's report then.
So I'd like to start by congratulating Mort and thanking him. He's a tremendously classy individual who has dedicated much of his time to improving learning opportunities for not only for the West students, but our entire district. And he is a wise man, and when he speaks, you want to listen. So, Mort, thank you so much for everything you're doing and
Thank you.
and your contributions. I would like to
I just
start.
wanna say- oh,
Go ahead, Mort.
I just want to say I'm glad I can continue on the negotiated.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it might be one of our most important negotiations. It'd be very interesting. So in terms of negotiation, I wanted to update the board relative to, let me backtrack. I do want to join in terms of the issues that our country is facing. I too participated in the march, but I jumped in on the Orleans march on Friday with hundreds and hundreds of people. I guess I'm not ashamed to tell you that that was my first protest ever in my life, and I found it to be very, very important for our students in our system and our parents and our community to know that this is a very, very important time in the history of our country, and it's time to stand up, and enough is enough. And I reflect on that experience. I can only imagine what it must have been like. It just picks you up and almost carries you in the movement. What it must have been like with Martin Luther King at the mall speaking on civil rights. And I look forward to the work that this district has to do to improve itself with many of the subjects that were raised that day. So thank you very much. In terms of negotiations, there are a tremendous amount of negotiations going on. We have started our negotiations with the region and Brewster custodians. We're about to get started with our ed assistants and as well with our secretaries. And more will be put to work here right after the school year ends, and we plan to go back to the table with the teacher's contract and get started on that and work through the summer to see if we can get that cleaned up and finished. The other negotiations is with the union leadership, and I wanted the board to understand that we have a contract in place, and we have been meeting now for almost a month with Mark and Ann, who would be the president and vice president of the union. And Carol Forgione has joined me from our side to go over all the issues, all the complicated pieces to remote learning and contracts and in some cases personnel issues. So that's been an ongoing process and a regular meeting each week to try and make sure that we can answer any questions from a labor standpoint across the entire district. The other piece that I would speak to is going forward, I want to warn the board, and I received a letter today from Tom Scott, the head of the Superintendent's Association, that there are tremendous amounts of misunderstood information relative to what's going to be happening with the opening of the school. An example of this would be that many of us are familiar with a document that just came down, and it was really about the supplies and the safety expectations for students eventually coming back. But then it began to get into a summer
Summer school.
direction in terms of what is it going to take to get back in to a summer school program. Now the camps are open and other recreation and things like this. Well, in the directive to the superintendents, it talks about 10 students in the summer program as a maximum number. Yet when I watched the early news this morning, and it's continued through the day, reporters have called, they think that is the setup for regular school in the fall, and that's not the case. And so I am very cautious with making sure that we have every group that's going to have any weight relative to what's going to happen in the fall before we roll out a program that makes sense for our entire system, and it meets the needs of the various stakeholders at the state level. I can tell you that on June 15th, the week of June 15th, the commissioner, and remember the superintendents are able to get on to a site, only the superintendents can get in with the commissioner. And in this meeting, just under 2 weeks ago, he had told us during the week of June 15, some day in that week, we would be called back into this meeting, and he would give us a directive of what we were going to go back to in the fall. Directive. And he was quick to say, not guidance, directive.
Wow.
And he went one step further to simply say that, and if the directive isn't followed, we'll be looking at the money that you're receiving.
Wow.
So what I hope to do moving forward is obviously I need to understand what the commissioner is saying, and then what fallout or what drive that message will be. And then we'll continue to work with various groups of people from health agents and others to understand what makes sense for us going forward once we understand what the new regulations will be, what are the new guidelines that we have to be considerate of. I have about 40 parents sitting on the sidelines who are waiting to join a task force. I hope to have 4 task force, 1 from each community, because the health agents have a lot of power. They have a lot of say in a lot of things. And we want to make sure that we're listening to our parents as well in terms of their concerns. I will tell you as a board that it's not uncommon that I'm getting 3 to 5 letters a day now on various possibilities that parents now want to weigh in on. Today's theme, maybe it was close friends sending the emails together, was about kids wearing masks in school. The idea that a child wearing a mask all day long in the first grade is absolutely insane. And so people are getting frustrated and are concerned about, 1, what's the educational product that we're delivering, and 2, what will be their role from the home in terms of whether or not they're going to have to stay home with their children or the kids are actually going to a physical building. I have told some of my colleagues and people in my own office that I think this will be a summer unlike any other summer. We'll be working on this much of the summer. And I think it is safe to say that we could go into July before we have any idea of exactly what the plan will be. And we have to be sensitive to that going forward, depending upon what the state really is telling us we have to do. And it could very well be 5 or 6 different options, and no one at this point knows exactly what it is. And so I wanted your board members to understand that. I'll take you one step further, that in our conversations, the elementary principals have been working very, very well together. Almost everything is done from the 5 elementaries. That's where my particular interest has been for the last couple of months of working directly in those work sessions. And going forward, I can tell you in the last union meeting that we have contracts that have to get out, but we're tremendously worried about the flexibility we might need in terms of assigning people, i.e. some people will go to remote learning, some people will go into some type of building setting. That's only an example. That's not cut in stone. And so I can tell you that as the contracts come out, the unions have agreed to only put down on a teacher's contract that it is a teacher's contract, not where they're teaching, not what they're teaching, but just a blank contract so that at least they can feel comfortable that that more than likely they're going to have a job, but all bets are off in terms of what we're going to do. I absolutely believe that we're going to have some families who will keep their kids out of our schools, no matter what.
That's true.
And we don't know the numbers. We don't have to know the numbers right now, but we will as we get ready to go ahead and assign our staff as needed into what we need to do to educate our kids. I think Mary Beth made an excellent point about some of the surveying she's going to do. We are very, very interested system-wide, looking at it from a pre-K to 5 and a 6 through 12, a deep understanding of what has worked well and what has not worked well. And I think there is some of both. And if we are moving forward with more remote education, we must get better. And so that's what I know relative to that. And we'll wait for the 15th or so of when the commission is going to make his announcement to the superintendents. And from that standpoint, you can anticipate that I'll try to give all 32 board members some insight into what the commissioner is saying.
Yeah.
Okay. And quite honestly, in our meetings with the commissioner, quite often, we're getting information 5 minutes before the governor is saying it. And so the commissioner can never get out in front of the governor, and everything is waiting for the governor to pass it down through his different agencies in terms of telling the public. So that's where we stand relative to that.
Dan?
The only other thing I would share with you is in looking at the guidelines for the summer program, he was quick to point that it was really not focused on academics or anything else. It was focused on student safety and staff's safety. And the general principles that almost all of us have been operating from haven't changed. The idea that you would wear masks, that you would stay 6 feet from each other, that you wouldn't come to work if you're ill, you would need an isolated spot, that if a child is sick, they would go into that spot until they're picked up or they go home, and so forth and so forth. So safety of staff and safety of our students it's the #1 issue. I'm just going to give you again some things that keep me up at night about going forward. and that's the potential number of employees who work for us who are going to say that for health reasons or other issues cannot come back to work. And that's going to be a staffing issue. That's going to be, in some cases, potentially a financial issue for us. And we're fully aware of the possibilities. We already know of 3 or 4 people who are telling us they can't come back in the fall. And that we haven't even asked for that information yet. So it's going to be tremendously challenging if we see a run of a high percentage of our employees who feel like they can't get back into schools. And if that isn't going to get you worried, I believe that if we're going to need transportation of some type in the region, that if we were to lose 5 or 6 drivers who said, I don't feel safe, and our drivers are almost all retired people, they could shut down the transportation system because there are no subs. And if there were no subs in the past few years, I can't see anybody excited to get into buses with kids passing by them and things like that. So I wish I had better news, but these are things that need to be considered. And I know this is a long report, I'm sorry, but I just want to touch base on just a couple of other points that we are certainly moving forward with a letter to our staff relative to stipends. And I've worked with the principals directly relative to what happened in the last third of the year in terms of stipends. And it goes something like this. If you did no work on your stipend, then you're not going to get paid for that stipend. If you did a partial amount of work, then we'll have a partial payment that is fair for the work done. And if you did the entire club activities or whatever it might be for the stipend, you would get your full payment. So that's in motion, and that was a negotiated discussion with the union, and because many of the stipends for the last third of the year are paid in the last check, and as it'll go into June, we had to have that finalized and completed. So, and I could go on, but I'll leave it at this point and try to answer any questions that people have specifically.
Jan?
Yeah, I guess we're all going to have a nightmare or two over this report, Tom. Not that we haven't been worried already, but there was one thing that you said that really alarmed me, and that is that we're going to be told by the commissioner what we're going to do. And I just hope and pray that it's not going to be just one size fits all, because we are so totally different from Lawrence or Boston or Springfield. And I would hope that there will be levels to this and not just one decree.
And I couldn't agree anymore. Absolutely. But you know, this is going to play itself out. There are decisions being made at this, not at our level. I mean, it's at the state level relative to how that filters down through the different stages and what's going to be acceptable or not. And I don't think anybody in the room with I've never heard that sort of, you know, if it wasn't already pointed out that it's a directive, not really discussable at this point. It's certainly not guidance.
No,
But then to tie the money into it, it's like,
yeah,
I've never really heard
a threat.
someone at the state level use that sort of verbiage. So
Right.
maybe we won't know until the 15th, and maybe calmer heads will prevail in terms of, I'm sure many of us have pushed out to our association that we were totally caught off guard and really not pleased at all with the tone of the meeting nor the language that was used in the meeting.
Yeah, thank you.
Mort?
Tom, the teachers who said won't come back in the fall, Is that strictly for safety? Is that what they?
Yeah, some have medical conditions that put them at high risk, and there's a process. Carol does a great job for us. I mean, obviously, we want to keep our people safe too, but we go through a process. You know, their doctors will be involved in that from a reporting standpoint, and the interesting piece is that if it's a blended program, and I have no idea how this is going to finish up at this point. But if we were to have some kids in a regular school setting and some on remote, this employee we would be hopeful that they could do the remote learning, not coming in contact with kids. So that's a possibility when this all shakes down, and we'll see.
Martha?
And just to make everybody's nightmares even worse, we have no idea what's going to happen with this virus. Some scientists are saying it will spike again in August. Others are saying October. Others are saying it won't, or it will, but it won't be as lethal. It's hard to even predict what we're looking at the beginning of the school year. We have no idea, and that's.
So you're absolutely right, Martha, and I think the issue for us going forward is we're working on a number of possibilities that will enhance our ability to teach remotely, because we know that some parents aren't going to send their children. The issue is that we don't know what the numbers are, and we're even thinking from a technology standpoint, would we have remote teachers at each grade level at the elementary schools? And let's say we have 15 students across grade 3 who are taking it remotely. Would we have one teacher teaching all 15 kids across the district? And that's not a plan. That's just looking at possibilities going forward. But even as we're looking at, because Barbara Lavoine is retiring, even from a district standpoint in terms of how we handle our technology going forward, and because we need the resources to manage all these challenges, and quite honestly, the community of Wellfleet, at least at the FinCom level, is concerned about the budgets going forward, and the possibilities of us trying to help the town a little bit in terms of if we can find some resources, financial resources, to help them too. So, and I just had that conversation with the chair, Fred McGee, just a few days ago.
Well,
Mort?
another question I have is that Dan Hort said a few weeks ago that every department is going to have to budget cut. Have you heard anything about that for our budget? Anything?
So Mark, when Giovanna and I, we went in front of the FinCom a couple of months ago. We were finalizing the region budget at that time, but right out of the chute, they were asking about where can we find some money to help offset. It's all based on potentially what are the revenue numbers going to look like from each of the towns for all the various ways that they bring their money in. And I don't study it, but I know Memorial Day was very slow, and that's the first kickoff to our summer season, and it's been slow in general. And now we just got into phase 2, and will that open up the opportunities to generate more funds for our communities? But there's no question, and I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but money is going to come into this formula before we're done. And let me just share another thought that is frightening. I meet every week with the superintendents on the Cape, and we get together and for a couple of hours, and we're discussing many topics around this. There is discussion that Chapter 70, which is the main source of money coming in from the state, and transportation can be cut 10%. And going forward, we're hopeful that when the legislature comes in, and we're being told in the middle of July to discuss the budget, that I'm sure they're waiting to see what federal dollars are coming in to help prop up the state of Massachusetts and the other 49 states, which have been devastated by the cost of taking care of this virus issue. But the issue, quite honestly, with the vast majority of superintendents is that this year looks like we're gonna somehow find our way through it. But a year out, it could be devastating because there's fear that the federal dollars will dry up a year out, and we could be in tough shape. So it's not a good picture, but I'm trying to be real, and I need to tell the board that going forward, we're going to have to be wise with our dollars. There's no question about it, and that's true for everybody, probably across this country in public education. So thank you.
Oh, the joys of working in the 21st century, huh?
Yeah, I'm sorry to tell you this. I wish I could just make it sound good, but it's not good. We got some challenges, and we're up to the challenge. I promise you that. We just got to work together and keep our eyes open and pay attention to what's happening around us. And I think Dan's point is excellent. We think we have some say in what our kids get too. I mean, we want to be good partners with the state, but we don't want the state banging us over the head, telling us do it or else. I know that's never proved to be very successful. And
outrageous.
So we'll see. Maybe calmer heads will come from the state level at the next meeting, and I'll have something positive to report to you when we get back together.
All right. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is bus parking follow-up. So we agreed and wrote a statement, and
It was well received.
I didn't know if I should put that statement somewhere. I was sort of working with Mary Beth on it, and then I just kind of lost track of it. Do we think there's anywhere that should be published or posted, or do you think it was enough that we said it at our meeting and wrote it in a note to Suzanne? Mort?
Well, she says she doesn't want that kind of parking. So, and we said we don't want to do it. I think that ends it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Martha? Oh, Martha, you're muted. You need to unmute yourself.
She doesn't hear you.
Got it.
There we go.
There you go.
Yeah.
I just wondered to what end what good would posting do? I'm curious.
I don't know. I think I was a little bit trying to be preventative because there was potential for someone to write an opinion piece who has in the past, and I didn't know if we got out in front of it, if that would be beneficial. But I mean, certainly it was discussed at the meeting, which was on videotape, and certainly it is on file with Suzanne. So now I'm feeling less like I did last month. I just kind of, to tell you the truth, lost track of it with everything that I'm trying to do from home here. So I don't know what other follow-up there is. So unless anybody else has anything else to say about it, I think we can let it until it comes up, again, when it's the time.
Right. Right.
I agree with Mort. I think absolutely.
Okay. I'm going to move us on to the FY20 budget review. Giovanna?
Thank you. Let's go directly to page 8 of the report, please.
That's my page.
The prior month balance was $42,621. We were able to put back into the budget $27,384, leaving a balance of $70,005. We had some circuit breaker funds that we needed to spend in fiscal 20, so we reclassified some expenses from the operating directly to circuit breaker. That was one of the reasons why the increase. We also have money in fuel that has not been unencumbered. Usually we fill up the tank before the end of the season. We're not going to do that this year because the cost of oil dropped substantially in fiscal 21 to less than half of what we're currently paying. So we're going to hold off on that. So at some point we're going to unencumber those funds. I'm going to go through the report and highlight the items that are over $1,000 since last month's reporting.
Over $1,000 saved.
Over what, if anything that was
Either way.
spent or put back into the budget.
Okay, okay.
So starting on page 5, the last item on the page, line item 4035, the special needs out of district transportation. We put back into the budget $36,321, and that is comprised of the money that was transferred directly to circuit breaker. And we also had additional savings in transportation of $15,352. That was realized because when we had the student, the collaborative that is now being homeschooled, we had encumbered for transportation costs for the entire school year. So this represents savings as the student is being homeschooled. Moving on to page 6, at the top of the page, line item 4075, salaries cafeteria. We spent or encumbered $7,395 since last month's reporting, and that's all due to costs incurred as a result of the preparation of the meals due to COVID-19. On the bottom of the page, line item 4060, the fuel oil, as I said earlier, we still have money encumbered there. We will unencumber those funds in the next couple of days. Moving on to page 7, towards the middle of the page, line item 4055, the contracted services building. We spent or encumbered $2,167 since last month's reporting, and that's all based on needs for repairs in the building. And finally, on this page toward the bottom, 4112, the after-school care aid salary, we unencumbered $1,186. So that was put back into the budget.
Right.
That's my report. Any questions?
How about the food situation through the end of the year? Is that taken care of, Giovanna? I mean, we're obviously spending more with the breakfast and lunch program.
Yes, we still haven't posted funds as a result of that program with a partnership with the church. Those will get posted before the end of the year. We have one payment that we received, and we'll allocate that out to each of the elementary schools, and then another payment should be received this week.
Okay, good. Okay.
Any other questions for Giovanna? I'm wondering, do we get any, do schools who are providing meals to families in Massachusetts? Is there grant or is there money coming from the federal government to help us with that, or no?
There's money in the CARES fund at each town, so we're working with the towns to get those funds. So we're trying to get the costs for the salaries paid covered. So
Do that, okay. Thank you.
May I ask in general here now, because the next item on the agenda is the spending plan. I think considering what the town has asked Tom to do through Mr. McGee, with seeing if we can save them some money And since they've been so good to us whenever we've asked for extra for special needs and for our situations, I'm wondering, as we look at this way to spend down our budget surplus, if we keep in mind that anything that we can return to the town at this particular time in the town's situation, because they have their own nightmares, that maybe that would be a good thing to do. Ordinarily, I'd say everything here we could use, we need, let's do it. But under these particular circumstances, I'm having second thoughts, having heard Tom's report.
Mort?
Jan, do you have any ideas, some specifics of what you think?
Can I just clarify? I just want to clarify, have we moved on to that agenda item? Are you ready to talk about that? Is that what you're referring to, Jan?
I am.
Okay, so let's just make sure we know we're there. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So Mort, does that answer your question that she's thinking about that, the
list,
spending plan?
You got it in your minutes,
okay.
In your agenda, Mort, the paying the preschool tuition,
All right.
cleaning, disinfectants, classroom supplies, all of these things.
Okay.
And I, you know, I'm,
And were we going to have, Giovanna, were you going to present this document, or was that Mary Beth?
I can present it. Mary Beth can present it.
Present it.
Do you want to talk about it, Mary Beth?
Sure. So this is what we had put together. And of course, you know, given the climate that we're in, we also discussed what we could sort of remove from this list to help out the town. So what we decided to do was to prepay what we could, because we don't know what next year is going to bring. So starting from the top with prepaying tuition, that is something that we would still like to be able to do. Prepaying special needs transportation, skipping down to custodial supplies. And that 7,000 would be for things not necessarily that would be covered by the CARES Act. So the other supplies and things that are used. We would like to keep the textbooks and workbooks in, because that's a prepay, as well as supplies general. And then skipping over supplies medical, because that will be covered under CARES. Other instructional material would be a prepay item as well. And special needs supply items, general, would also be a prepay. Our point of sales unit, since we have some savings in our cafeteria revolving, we could use that instead. So potentially we could be looking at the tech instructional equipment, because now we found out after this was put together that we would be getting ESSER funds. So we would be utilizing those funds to purchase what we need for instructional equipment. And supplies and medical, that can be covered under the CARES Act, so would not have to come out of appropriations. And point of sale. So with those three items, we could potentially give back $32,400.
which is exactly what I was hoping for. Thank you, Mary Beth.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Yeah.
Okay, any further questions or discussion?
I think this goes a long way in goodwill, because before we know it, we're going to be asking for money again. You know, it's just the way it happens. And I think this is, you know, Tom, do you agree?
Yes, I absolutely agree.
Okay.
And I do, Jan, along with that, what you don't know behind the scenes is we spent a couple of hours at least this morning, Giovanna, Mary Beth and I, looking at this, and
Mhm.
we felt we had to have a reason of why we weren't going to spend that money,
Right.
which I think Mary Beth did an excellent job explaining of ways that we think we can help ourselves in another way. So
Right.
I think this is a very, very wise move going forward.
Okay, good. I move that we, well, now I didn't add up all the other stuff. Do you want to do it in the absence or in the affirmation? I don't know what it comes to without the 32.4. Is it $70,005? That is the total minus 32,400? Giovanna?
So the total would be the $70,005 plus the $24,469. That's a total of $94,474.
Okay,
And out of that, you
minus 32,400.
32, correct.
Okay. So then. let's
I
see,
see Jill's hands up in just a moment, Jill, after we do
Okay.
this.
Two from that, two. So then I guess I would be moving that we use $62,074 from the FY20 budget toward the FY21 budget.
Okay, so that's your motion. Do we
Yep.
have a second? Are we moving and voting this? We are, correct?
I was hoping to make a comment before we vote.
Well, we won't vote. We just need a second and then
Okay.
we can talk. Do we
I
have a
second.
second? Okay, so
second.
Martha. Okay, Jill?
Okay, I'm really pleased that we had 3 different eyes really assess what we could give back to the town. I've been really active with my work with early childhood in NACI, and there's all these early childhood programs that are opening. As you mentioned, Tom, there's so many uncertainties, but there's also directives. So classrooms that used to have 15 kids in it now have to have 10. I have all these programs that are on hold right now, and I've been doing, very active with all these new protocols for all these early childhood centers. Some of them are 12-month that have already opened. I'm just really concerned because there's so many things we don't know, but and the surprises. So it is a requirement that children have to wear masks, and staff and temperature taking right now in early childhood programs, and teachers who had a classroom of 15 no longer have a classroom of 15. Now they're in another room if they have another room. And teachers who've had the same group don't have the same group now. And all the unexpected expenses that are popping up moment to moment. So I totally agree with everybody who have voiced, let's give back as much as we can to the town that we don't need or that we can do without. But I'm also feeling horrifically insecure that I hope, and again, I'm comforted that 3 different specialists have looked at the budget and feel like, yes, there's some things that we can manage. So it's just my concern of all the unknowns for needing stuff that we might not be able to imagine right now.
Mary Beth?
I feel confident, Jill, that with the 2 funding sources, ESSER and CARES, that anything that is COVID related will be reimbursed, or we will be getting the funds up front. We still have our capital improvement plan to see if that passes at town meeting, and we do have funds in there as well as through ESSER for technology. So I feel as though with what the federal government is providing, that we will be just fine.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further comments before we vote? Okay, then let's take a vote. All in favor of Jan's motion? Aye.
Aye.
Can you see us all, Anne? I think we're all in favor. Okay. All right, hold on. My battery just got low, so I had to plug in. Now I got to go get my computer so I can look at the agenda.
Mort,
The odd thing I think that Jill's pointing out, in some ways, it's all going to be more expensive.
Yes.
Yes.
Just, there may
Yeah.
be less money, but more expense.
Right.
But
Terrible.
the point is that with this particular money, we have always resolved it by June 30th. That's part of the, democratic process, I guess you'd say, that it's part of the budget that needs to be completed by June 30th. So even though, it would be nice to say, well, let's just hold it in a kitty, we legally cannot do that.
Right.
Well, I appreciate, Jan, you bringing that to our attention and keeping that as something important. I do think it helps really build that relationship with the town. And especially as we'll be transitioning into town administrators, it might just be a nice foot forward.
Yeah.
So, okay, we are going to move on to the FY21 budget review then.
I'll speak to that. Right now, the guidance that we've gotten from the state is that the region is in a 1/12 budget situation, and the towns are in a 1/12 budget as well. And the Wellfleet Elementary School falls under the town, so we'll be following their guidelines as to the amount of funds available to us monthly. So we'll coordinate with the town administrator and the finance director. But that's until which time that the town meeting happens, we have to follow the 1/12 budget guidelines as dictated by the Department of Revenue.
Great. Mary Beth?
And just to clarify, that's a 1/12 budget based on the FY20
Correct.
budget.
Okay. Any further comments on that? Okay, let's move on to school committee vacancy. So I asked Tom to speak to this for us. It's just, we just want to make sure that we're following protocol and the rules, and we really just, I wanted to hijack this agenda to say, Mort, are you sure you really want to leave? Isn't it a little too early to retire?
You have a good person who's running, who's going to get elected. Don't
So, yeah, but I did want more, Tom, to help us understand what's okay for us to do in terms of, like, do we solicit, do we not solicit? So thank you, Tom.
So thank you very much, Betsy. I reached out to your association for guidance relative to what school committee members can do and what they can't do. And I think it's pretty straightforward. The first piece to understand is that as a citizen who serves on a board, outside of the meeting, you have a right to do what you want. You can support whoever you want. You can put signs on your lawn, and so forth. But when you are doing the business of the committee, you have to refrain from discussion relative to candidates or take any action relative to the recruitment or otherwise of candidates going forward. I think it's that straightforward.
So we already did something not so good at the last
We
meeting.
did. I'm like,
Yeah.
"Oh."
That's okay.
And now it's televised.
Oh, help.
Oopsies.
Well, it was innocent. It
Yes,
was
it was.
totally innocent.
Jill?
Absolutely, our intentions are and continue to be to have somebody who will serve and contribute to the committee. So certainly the intentions also to save the headache of having a vacancy, we're all good. Just a clarification, I mean, we can give as an individual, right, that somebody is available to be a write-in. We're not endorsing, we're just giving information.
So Jill, you have every right as a citizen and a resident in Wellfleet on your own time.
Right.
To do anything you want to do like that. That's
Got it.
absolutely right.
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
But
More,
I thought we already know somebody who wants to fill the vacancy. And so I'm ready to submit a write-in vote for that person. Is that a problem?
Yeah, that's more, when you say that, you're talking about as from a resident standpoint, not necessarily from the board's position on it.
Oh, okay.
right, so the board would not recommend anybody. The board, in future, we will probably shouldn't be discussing vacancies, but outside of the meeting, it's certainly
Absolutely.
is fine for us to look and ask and,
you have every right as a citizen to do that.
Yeah.
okay.
Convoluted.
Thank you. Is there, and does I think it was maybe more for me than anybody else, but I just wanted it on the agenda. Is there anybody else who has a question or a comment to make on that? Okay. School committee schedule. So that must be for summer meetings.
9 a.m.
I think we all said 9 a.m.
Yeah.
Did we not? Great.
Thank you.
We're
Yeah.
good for 9 a.m. Okay. No further discussion on that. So we're down to reports and information. Jill, anything from Cape Cod Collaborative?
Yes, there was a Zoom meeting on May 13th, and there's a Zoom meeting tomorrow. We voted 2% raises for staff, and just a reminder that Collaborative does not have a union. So the Collaborative usually is under the staff schedules, the ladder that typically people have. So we try to keep up with somewhat of similar raises. There has not been representatives from Truro, Martha's Vineyard, Provincetown, Cape Cod Tech, even though things are Zoom now and actually a bit easier to be on a meeting.
Yeah.
It does surprise me, but if somebody's missed 2 meetings in a row, then they're voted out temporarily. And then when somebody shows up, they're voted in again. Very exciting. There were, in spite of everything, there were 3 graduating seniors from the alternative high school, and there was a parade. And I mean, even without the COVID mess, it's just so amazingly exciting, to have 3 graduating seniors out of the alternative high school. Plymouth Public Schools has made an overture to the collaborative that they would like to join. So any district off the Cape cannot be a full-fledged member. What they can do is be an adjunct member. So that means that nobody has, the school would not have, the district would not have representation on the board. They wouldn't have voting privileges, but they would have program privileges. So in other words, a certain amount of money off, or, get their children into some programs of the collaborative. Oh,
I'm sorry.
no problem. Where's that coming from? So, it's unfortunate that even though now the governor did say, now we can have camp, now we can have all kinds of summer programs, the ASLP, the leadership program, most unlikely that's not going to happen in the traditional way. So in other words, kids will not be in dormitories. But what they are looking into is maybe, just maybe, some sort of Zoom, some sort of virtual, some sort of online classes that the kids who so deserve it and got the opportunity can still have it, but in a different way. And maybe, just maybe, there might be a weekend where they have on the dormitories. So that's to be worked out. The collaborative did, they sought out the Paycheck Protection Program plan. They got accepted along with 4 other collaboratives. It's a little bit edgy as far as will it really be needed and eligibility entities and all that. You know, after getting legal counsel and lots more information, it appeared to be the way to go, and we'll see. There was a lot, folks. I'm trying to cut this down. This was a very long meeting. Waypoint, individual learning plans. What they did also was a survey with families as well as the younger children in the STAR program. You know, really asking family what is working for you, what isn't working for you. So they're really taking into consideration, you know, what the families are saying and what they can do. And certainly with the STAR and the Waypoint, you know, there's so many other stressors and challenges that this is good information for them to work with. Professional development, they're looking for more opportunities for online professional development. There's a new program coordinator for Waypoint named Kara Peterson. There's a lot more, but these are the highlights.
Thank you, Jo.
You're welcome.
But did I miss something? Did they decide to accept Plymouth as an adjunct or not?
That's going to be continued tomorrow night. So I'll have something definitive next time.
Okay.
Great, thanks. Preschool enrollment, do we have a report? No. There's no PTA report. Mary Beth, are they meeting or no? Okay. Strategic plan, Martha?
Nothing?
Nothing?
We're done
Okay.
for now.
And what about your substance abuse mental health task force? Okay. I have nothing to report from policy at this time. Wellness?
No.
Okay. Future agenda items. How much we will miss more. I'm going to put that on the next one.
Okay.
How much we'll miss.
Yeah, just, I really don't want to have to wait, Tom, until the next meeting to find out what kind of directive you've gotten the week of 15th June. So is there some way you can give us some idea of what's coming down?
So I plan, once I get that information, it's public at that point, as far as I'm concerned, that I would be sending it to all the board members in the district
Thank you.
of what the directive was and anything else that supports what he's saying.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Martha?
Yes, I would recommend that we limit our agenda items to only something that's, you know, like the budget, things that we really have to know about every month, and have it be about school opening. And I think that there will be so much to talk about after the commissioner hands down his commission that it might be good just to really limit our meeting to what is going to happen and how we can help and what we can do in terms of the opening.
Okay, so we'll keep it to really a communications type agenda.
For
That'll
the
give us
summer.
time to process and ask questions and that.
Right.
Okay, sounds good.
And Mort, you can still come.
We will
The
send
back
you
of
the
the
Zoom
room.
invite.
Yes, you can, Mort.
You can now
I'll
be
sit
a
it-
member.
how about-
You can be a
I'll be,
community member.
I'll be citizen speak, right?
Yes, yes.
You'll get to howl.
Yeah.
There you
They
go.
don't, Martha, they don't know about that.
Oh,
I do.
Oh, you do?
My neighborhood started for a little
Okay,
while.
7:30. Got to get out of here by 7:30.
Oh, we will. Okay, so approval of minutes. Does anybody have to speak to the minutes? Mary Beth.
Yes, under mine, and let's see, I think it's the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th line. It says they will have a spring concert. If you could just change that to they hope to. So Mr. Staker is working on something that's going to be a surprise.
Oh. You have a very resilient staff, Mary Beth.
Yes, she does.
Thank you. Thank
Yes.
you.
Yeah.
And thank you, Mary Beth, for all the communications, really.
Oh,
It's
my pleasure.
so fun
absolutely.
to see the art show and just get all the updates. It really makes my
Thank
day.
Thank
Right.
you so much.
All
And I
right,
gotta make
so
sure that Mort is going to do his famous, the last
Are
time.
you ready?
yes,
Are
so
you
what
ready?
We have to
we need a
approve the
motion for
minute.
the minutes.
Yeah.
We need to approve the minutes. So, Maura, would you like to make a motion about the minutes?
I move that we approve the minutes as amended.
Second,
Oh, great. And okay, Mort, this is it.
I move that we adjourn.
yay!
Oh, second.
Thank you,
I'll miss
Mort.
all of you.
We will miss you too. Thank you so much.
Standing O for Mort, standing O.
I'm not going away, by the way. I'm here.
Don't
Standing
go away.
Oh, well, for Clint.
Mm.
Good night.
Good